From the City of Angels near the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. This is Coast to Coast AM. Later tonight, the supernatural. Here's what's happening. Well, the tragedy in Turkey and Syria just doesn't end. More than 21,000 people have now been killed, tens of thousands injured. That'll go up even higher after that magnitude 7.8 earthquake struck Turkey and Syria on Monday. Teams are racing now to rescue survivors as aid agencies warn that new snowfall, as well as a lack of water, communications, and power, could cause a deadly secondary disaster. My gosh, it's got to be one of the worst things I've seen. A suspected Chinese surveillance balloon that the U.S. shot down this week was able to collect communications signals. It was equipped with multiple antennas capable of intelligence collection operations, according to a senior State Department official. U.S. lawmakers passed a non-binding resolution condemning China for the balloon. China has denied the balloon was used for spying purposes. What else could it be used for? Russia has hundreds of thousands of soldiers, thousands of tanks, hundreds of warplanes prepared for another assault, according to the Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is believed to be preparing for a massive new offensive in the coming weeks to coincide with the first anniversary of that war. Eye drops recall pulling 2 brands of artificial tears are the latest development in what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention calls an outbreak of extensively drug-resistant bacteria in Florida, New York, Texas, California, and a few other states. Here's what you need to know about the CDC and the FDA. What eye drops are recalled. Global Pharma Healthcare yanked all lots, all expiration dates of EzraCare, EZRICARE, and Delsim Pharma artificial tears, lubricant eye drops, which were sold over the internet. Now, normally, food safety coach Jeff Nelkin is with us to talk about food recalls, but I thought we'd bring him in on this one. Jeff, I've never heard of eye drops being recalled like this.
Me neither, and the recall seems to be spreading. It's covering about 10 different artificial tear products. So if anybody is using these products and they have any kind of an infection or their eyes, there starts to be a vision issue, they need to contact their physician. But I have a couple of contact numbers, so if people are concerned and they want to call during, normal hours, you can reach out and contact the companies that you described.
Please.
Okay, 518-738-7602, and we also have 1-800-332-21083. And again, the CDC and the FDA are investigating, and so far, a lot of the products that they've interviewed from people who've had issues were products that were open. So it's kind of like an ongoing mystery investigation. So more to be uncovered as time goes on.
And one person so far, Jeffrey, has died from this situation.
Correct. As well as about 15 hospitalizations.
Crazy stuff. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Jeff Nelkin, foodsafetycoach.com is his website. Experts say slashing calorie intake slows the aging process and reduces the risk of an early death. Now, we all kind of knew this. Christian Wild from myheartbook.com is with us. It makes a lot of sense, Christian.
It absolutely does, and we've been told it since we were children. It would be hard to disagree with this advice. And in fact, George, what would be the motivation to deny it? If, as the study findings indicate, we might extend our lives, our lifespan, enjoying better health in the time we have with our friends and our families. Today, with the cost of food as outrageous as it is, and the economy as it is, we may have to eat a less than desirable diet with higher fat-based calories, unhealthy weight-gaining calories, and settle for foods we normally would resist. Unfortunately, the less healthy food is what we are often having to settle for, particularly when a muffin can cost, three and a half, and $4.50, and a small size chef salad upward of $20,
That's
$22, $25. So what choices we tend to make in food types are more in keeping with our pocketbooks compared to what we would normally choose. So with the cost of growing foods and the cost associated with bringing it to the table as outrageously high as they are, we have to think creatively in providing the healthiest meals for our families and at the same time avoiding that fat-based, less expensive ingredients in foodstuffs. Well, we've all heard this a lot, George, but according to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, eating more produce is truly one of the most important and impactful habits we can adopt. But unfortunately, according to the centers, only about 1 in 10 U.S. adults eats enough fruits and vegetables. So in keeping and agreeing with tonight's reported study, reaching those minimums may add years to your life. An earlier meta-analysis in the International Journal of Epidemiology found that a higher consumption of fruits and vegetables is associated with a lower risk of mortality from all causes, and that's including heart disease and cancer. The advice is to aim for at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day.
They'll help. Christian's website, myheartbook.com. Thank you, Christian. One of the most accomplished pop music composers of the 20th century, Burt Bacharach, has died at the age of 94. The musical maestro behind 52 top 40 hits, including Alfie, Walk On By, Promises, Promises, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, What the World Needs Now Is Love, and Do You Know the Way to San Jose? Bacharach had an untouchable run in the 60s and 70s with a wide range of pop, R&B, and soul artists, and according to the Associated Press, he died Wednesday at his home in Los Angeles of natural causes. He was great. 59 years ago today, which was on a Sunday, 59 years ago, the Beatles made several appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show back in 1964. Just amazing. And, of course, you know what happened afterwards, the history behind the Beatles and everything else. In a moment, Marshall Barnes joins us. We're going to talk about time travel next on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Marshall Barnes back with us, research and development engineer in advanced concept science and technology. Marshall has a long history in the entertainment, technology, production, and video industry that is only matched by his incredible achievements in science and innovation, which includes breakthroughs in optical invisibility research, advanced propulsion, and consciousness. He perhaps is best known for his world-class research into time travel science and technology, being the first person ever to have a double-blind, peer-reviewed paper published on the quantum basis for time travel. A couple of his books include Paradox Lost and Black Holes and Time Tunnels. Marshall, welcome back. And you talk about time travel 59 years ago thinking of the Beatles. That's amazing, isn't it?
I was 4 years old. I was in front of the TV set. I was very excited. So
I remember that.
I saw that. Yeah.
Me too. Everybody did. 73 million people watched that night.
Right. Exactly.
How you been?
I've been too busy for comfort. In fact, I'm reminded of that thing that Elon Musk said. Like, you don't want to be in this position. It's too rough. You know, he says it's bad for your heart, it's bad for your brain. He's exactly right. I've been in exactly that same kind of position where so much was going on and I had to deal with that. It's a nightmare. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, regardless of how exciting some of the outcome has been.
My gosh, but are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just really, really fried. I mean, I've been getting an average of about 6 hours of sleep at night, but not consecutively. You know, it's like it's been really broken up. I'm not really complaining that much, but I'm complaining that much. So, but I'm all right. I'm all right.
Well, you were last on with me a little over a year ago. What has moved on since then?
Oh, we've made so much progress since then. Something funny. One of the things that we did first was we were able to link Tom Bearden to some of this research, and also Bearden was interested and a promoter of the idea of the quantum basis for parallel universes, and there was some linkage there with time travel. And so Beard and I spent one evening, we were together for like about 8 hours at a USPA convention. And a lot of people said, because I wanted to talk to him, because I'd seen him before. And a lot of people said, well, he'll probably only give you a few minutes. And we were talking for 8 hours.
Wow.
And after that, I didn't see him again. He lived for quite a while, because this was back like late 90s. And then he died, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but
story.
the thing about it was he really unloaded a lot of information on me, which I was able to, and I had a couple of his books like Verderlands and that type of thing. And so Bearden, I was able to go back and look at some of his research, and the problem with Bearden is that he his attack on certain problems were so original, and he would reinterpret them, and some people just thought he was off, but a lot of times he was actually on. And so we were able to link some of his work with what we found out to be answers for certain approaches to time travel. And then more recently, we're at the end now. I mean, we found out that there is one last thing that needs to be done to make any kind of time travel event take place, and that has to do with the idea of tuning. I know a lot of people are really into the idea of frequency and stuff and whatnot, but the key thing is what you do with that, how you tune it, how you tune whatever it is that you're actually working on trying to make take place. It's sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with frequency at all, but it does have to do with how you manipulate whatever it is that you're doing, whether that has to do with resonance or whatever. But once you do that, that's it. And it's going to be different for everything that you might be trying to do, because there's different ways of doing it. And that's another difficulty in trying to figure out how to make time travel work. But once you get it figured out according to your approach, we're expecting big things to happen. And the next event would be a time travel event, what we would call a science fiction level event.
That's huge.
So we're there now, working on trying to make those things happen, and that's it.
So you're knocking on the time travel door, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Leaning against it, beating it.
All we got to do is open that door and see what happens. And when we talk about time travel, Marshall, are we talking about going into the future, going into the past, what?
Okay, first of all, I'm talking about specifically going to the past, because I don't know anyone who wants to go to the future. I mean, imagine it's 2019, and time travel's been figured out. Like, great, I'm going to go to the next year, 2020, see what's going on. And you arrive, and what happens?
What a mess.
COVID
and all that other stuff.
Right. No one of any kind of brains wants to go to the future, because we have no idea what to expect, and it could be the last thing that you do. So instead, you go, wow, let's see, what happened in the past? That could be a really good time to hang out in and, have some fun, maybe retire. You do that because you know what's going to happen. You're not going to. There's not going to be an asteroid, and there's not going to be a world war.
Right. You know what's happened already.
What?
By going into the past,
yeah.
you already know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, exactly.
I'd like to go back and see Jesus on the Mount preaching. Well, I mean, to me, I would just think that would be fascinating.
Well, here's the deal. You're not going to be able to understand what he's saying. Number two, you're going to need a security detail, because what's going to happen is if anyone tries to talk to you, you can't talk back to them because you can't talk the language.
Right.
There's a guy named, I'm trying to remember his name, is Michael, I can't remember his last name. He's the inventor of this machine called the Genesis machine, which was kind of a body, yoga. It wasn't a yoga thing, but it was for your body and your mental health and relaxation and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Michael and I used to hang out together, and we used to theorize what we would do if we had a time travel agency that was a travel agency, right? And we go, yeah, well, first thing we got to do is take well-heeled, aging hippies back to Woodstock, and so they can have that experience. But the other thing, the problematic thing that we didn't really want to deal with, was because it was going to be difficult. It's like taking people to see the things from the Bible, particularly Jesus, that whole bit. Because, I said, what's going to happen? They're going to go see the thing before the crucifixion, and somebody's going to run out and try to be the person that helps Christ carry the cross.
Yeah,
and that's going to tick off the Roman guys. And the next thing you know, the security details have to whip out the MP5s, and we got all kinds of problems.
No, you're right. I mean, I would be one of those to try to pull them down off the cross. They'd come down after me, wouldn't they?
It would be a mess. So that was one of the things we all decided that, that's going to be a problem. We'd have to do psychological profiles on people that would go, so that we would know that we wouldn't have someone prone to do exactly that. All that kind of stuff.
What would happen, Marshall, if you did go into the future, and let's say you went to the year 4000, and all of a sudden there's nothing here. It's gone. The planet's gone barren, basically. Well,
that's why you don't go to the future.
Can you get back?
Exactly right. Huh?
Could you
get back?
You could get
back. Depends on how you went. It depends on how you went, what methods you use. There's two methods as far as time travel goes. You're going to have a vehicle method or a station method.
What's the easier of the two?
The easier overall is the vehicle method, because you have some independence in terms of how you're traveling, and like, for example, as long as you can maintain the vehicle in terms of keeping it safe while you're gone, hiding it and whatever, then you're good. But say if something happens to that vehicle, you're stuck there unless you can fix it. But if you use a station method, which is basically like Stargate or something like that, the time tunnel, those kind of things, then you're good, because you're going to assume that everything back at the base is going to be okay, back at the headquarters, so to speak. And so if something goes wrong, you're going to be hoping they can open up that connection again to where you are.
Would it be like Back to the Future and the DeLorean, where you hop in it and
that's the vehicle method, is the DeLorean idea. That the TARDIS from Doctor Who, that's another vehicle method.
Marshall, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back and talk more about your incredible work for time travel next on Coast to Coast AM. We'll take your calls next hour with Marshall Barnes as we talk about time travel. I'm going to jump right in with a couple more questions, and then we'll get to the top of the hour and take your calls next hour on Coast to Coast. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Marshall Barnes with us. His websites are all linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Marshall, what do you think would come first, the machinery time travel machine or the sound resonance?
Sound resonance. Well, first of all,
tuning.
Well, the technology is right along with it. I mean, we're working on things now. In fact, we've done experiments with devices now, so there's not really a kind of what's going to come first. And as far as sound resonance goes, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to.
Well, when you were talking about tuning and things like that.
Oh, no, okay. Tuning, see, that's the problem. Tuning does not have to do specifically with a sound. Tuning is how you attenuate whatever is the effect that you're using to try to cause something to take place. It's not a sound thing at all.
It's not like trumpets and things like that.
No, absolutely not, no.
Okay.
No, and also another thing I want to clear up real quick is when it comes to time travel, nothing is literally traveling through time like you see at the beginning of Doctor Who, and the TARDIS is going through some kind of a tunnel. That's not what happens. What happens is what you're trying to do is you're trying to cause a decoherence split between where your target is, whatever you're trying to send, and at the next moment where they are in terms of the quantum mechanics is concerned, because you want to put them in a new quantum mechanical parallel universe, a copy of the past. It's not literally the past, and that's the reason why we can make it work, because we don't have to deal with any of the the issues that a lot of people point out about, like, for example, entropy and the second law of thermodynamics, all that kind of stuff that would be violated through the normal way that time travel is described or thought of. But if you're dealing with, like, a quantum copy of that particular time period in the next moment in the area that you're targeting, that's a whole other ball of wax.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally allowable, and that's why what we're doing is so important and so viable, because we're not making any of these other mistakes.
And when you travel into the past or the present or the future, rather, and are we there physically, or are we going to be there just like a dream state?
No, this is physical, because here's the main purpose for this research is to get out of here before it all goes to where in the handbasket.
Yeah.
Okay. We are not positive about the future. And as a matter of fact, Elon Musk kind of feels the same way. He thinks there's lost threats, and his approach to what to do about those is radically different from mine. However, we both share the same fears. Something's going to go terribly wrong. There's a number of things that could go wrong, and this is how serious things are. I put out published a statement for the COP27 climate crisis conference that was in Egypt a few months ago, right? And this is a real test, because I didn't know, since it's about climate, all these scientists are going to be there or whatnot, I didn't know how the reaction was going to be, right? But I know even people from NASA that were into the whole climate issue that saw it, and they didn't attack me, they didn't diss me, I didn't get any flack from anybody. And so the thing about it is, things are so bad. People are like, if time travel will work, then let's do it, because they think they're up against the wall. I mean, that's how bad things are. So we're getting a lot of people that are worried about the future. They see things that they don't like, and this is going to become something that they're interested in, because if we can make it happen, then shebang, here you go.
That's right. Are there companies secretly working on time travel without us knowing about it? I mean, you may know about it.
Well, I mean, I don't know, because then I would know about it. But the thing is that I hear a lot of flack every once in a while, but I have to do. If somebody says, "Oh, I'm working on time travel," I say, "Really? Tell me what time is." And then that's where the rubber hits the road.
They can't tell you.
Because they'll end up doing, so usually give me some kind of variation off of what duration is. Duration is when you make those measurements. How long does something last? The duration's even like, months, years, minutes, whatever. That's what most people think about as far as time goes. It has nothing to do with it. Because if you think about relativity theory, when Minkowski first was talking about Einstein's theories and saying, well, from here on out, time and space are inextricably connected. Well, a lot of people didn't take that serious enough. Time is connected to space, and it serves a specific purpose, and that is to allow things to take place. Space is where things happen, and time is what lets it happen. If you get rid of time, nothing happens. And time is not duration. That's why we call it duration. And here's the proof about that. In advanced physics, there's something called the asymmetry of time problem. What is it? It is a situation where we only see things moving forward, so to speak. And you break an egg, it doesn't come back together again. All right? Even though the math for reassembling or running things backward exists, but scientists never see those things happen. And so the thing about it is, if duration was the same thing as time, you could substitute duration, or use that instead of the word time. And what does that give you? It gives you the duration, the duration asymmetry issue. That's what it'd be. But the duration is not asymmetrical; it's symmetrical. So that means it works both ways, front and back. If you have 5 minutes, you can take it away, or you can add it together again. It works like that. But the actual thing that we're talking about in terms of that asymmetry problem doesn't work like that. So that means that time and duration are not the same thing. And that's the thing most people don't understand, because they're not involved in advanced physics. Wow. Who would have thunk it? So that's the deal.
Tell us about your work with parallel universes. You've been dabbling with that too.
Well, that is the kind of the background story. It begins a long time ago. Fred Allen Wolf, and what happened was, long story short, I was in the entertainment industry, and we were using an advanced altered state of consciousness technique to come up with story ideas, and which was working out great. But then eventually things start happening. They start for real, like they start coming true. We would like make up a character, and then we'd run to somebody who was just like that character. And I was like, wait a minute, except that they were here instead of like in a parallel universe or something. And we didn't know what was going on. We thought that was totally bizarre. I ran across a book called Parallel Universes: A Search for Other Worlds by Fred Allen Wolf, and in it was a lot of the kind of things that we were talking about. And see, you got to remember, at that particular moment, I knew nothing about the science of quantum mechanics or any of that stuff. So we contacted him, told him what was going on, and he got interested, and he came to see us. And we showed him all this evidence. Look, here's this, here's that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was overwhelming. And so he said, this is a very profound statement. He was talking to me. He says, well, aside from this just being like a chance kind of deal, which is, it seems to be too much happening for it to be that. He says, what it is you're a receiver. You're tuning into something that's real. And as you tune into it and people start to hang out with you and resonate with you, it becomes like a powerful draw. And then things that are like that are drawn to you, and things that are like the things that you're tuning into will manifest around you. And that is very profound because it's also now, we know, part and parcel of what can happen when we're working on time travel. What you want to do is you want to create something that is going to act as what you might call in fractal geometry or a chaos math, a strange attractor. And then things that are like what you're trying to do are going to start to happen. And then it gets to a critical point, and then that tuning part that I was talking about happens, and then pow, there you go. It's you've crossed the line. If you're trying to send somebody somewhere, then that's when that happens. If you're trying to bring something here, that's when that happens. There you go. So Fred Allen Wolf laid it out for us back in 1992. So what has happened since, I've now gotten to the point where I've done experiments, and like you mentioned during the opening show, we've been able to prove scientifically with physical experiments that no one thought would be possible how that parallel universes are real. And the reason why I was able to do it and nobody else did it is because most people, I don't mean most people, I'm talking about scientists now, they don't know what time is. All right? So since they don't know what time is, and then the problem is they didn't see the connection between it and the parallel universe ideas. All right? And so I was trying to resolve the time paradox in what they call retrocausal experiments, where they can do things with a particle where they change the path that the particle went down after the fact, and they can make it show up someplace else that shouldn't, as if it had gone that way all along. And so they say, oh, we've changed the path of the particle. I'm going, no, because we know what really happened. So you didn't change anything. That would be a paradox, and I don't believe in paradoxes. So I then realized, oh, wait a minute. That's kind of like, the Schrodinger's cat, where you put the cat in a box, and then you open it up, and you wait a while, you know the story.
Yeah.
Cat's either alive or dead, unless you're using the computer version like I like to do, and the cat's either asleep or awake. So what happens is that I'm thinking, no, instead of changing past the particle, we've created a new parallel universe that we're in that has that alternate outcome that would be there if we hadn't done what we did. So that became the method or the practice of what we were trying to do, was to prove that. Can we experimentally prove it? We know that what the experiment looks like already. Can we prove that this is what's going on? And that's what I ended up being able to do, and that's what sold it. That's why I got the double-blind paper published, because in the paper I had photographed the entire parts of the experiment, because we have to film them so you can go back and look frame by frame to see if an anomalous result happens, which is you get a hit in an area where no laser was fired, for example. And so that we were able to show that. And what are you going to do? They can't tell us, oh, you're wrong. They're looking at the photographic evidence in full color, right? So, yeah, that was it. So now parallel universes are connected to the whole time travel thing solidly. The Perimeter Institute, Neil Turok from there said back in 2018 he thought that was going to be the answer. That somebody was going to come along and connect quantum mechanics as a solution for time travel to the past.
It makes sense.
What happened?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You wrote a letter to the head of the World Economic Forum. What was that about, and what happened?
Well, basically, oddly enough, what happens was that they had done something that with this article written by Richard Muller about time. Okay, oddly enough, and so what happens is that he had a book out called Now, and he's trying to explain how he thinks time works and all this stuff. And they put it on their website. That's how World Economic Forum got connected to it. So that gave me an opening to then send them a letter. And because what I was looking at was the fact that there was some controversy with the organization, as you well know. And Elon Musk was trying to make a big deal out of it. He was saying, I'm not going to go. I don't think necessarily that it's some conspiratorial thing. I just think it's going to be boring. And so that's what he stated on Twitter. And then what happens is the event starts to take place, and the media, who wasn't following necessarily every tweet that he did, thought he was going to be there. And then it turns out, no, he's not going to be there. And the organization came out and said, well, we didn't invite him anyway. He hasn't been here since 2015. So that was an egg on his face. That gave me an opening to come in and do something big. And so I wrote the letter to Professor Klaus Schwab, who was the head of head of the organization. And I used some of the things from my past that I thought he would find interesting, like my letter from David Rockefeller Jr. inviting me to this big arts and education shindig that he had going on at OSU at one point. And I basically was a letter saying, look, you have a controversial reputation. There's a lot of people here that don't like you guys. I mean, it's not very good either because, if you go too far, then what will happen is they're going to attack you. They've already done it here in my country because he's in Switzerland. So I'm like, but I think there's things that you're interested in that, we can agree on. And there's alternative ways to approach doing it. And one of them is mine, which is like now using time travel to the past to come up with solutions for things. So it's all in there. It just came out not too long ago. So we'll have to see how it goes. But, I mean, we got a real good rep out of the COP27 thing. And I even mentioned that in that letter. And then also, I wrote a review updating the review of that book, by the way, because it had a lot of things wrong with it. So, and I have a link. I had a link in the letter to that article I did, updating their thing. And that showed them that, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I don't know what their interest at the time was in on time and time travel and all that, but it was there. It was on their website. It was from a few years ago. So
that's pretty impressive.
How it plays out.
Marshall, we're going to come back and take calls with you. We're talking time travel with Marshall Barnes, and we're going to take your calls this hour with him when we come back on Coast to Coast AM. Welcome back. Marshall Barnes with us. Marshall, how would the time travelers be selected? The first ones, would they be voluntary? What do you think it would be like?
They're customers.
Yeah.
We got people paying to go. Yeah.
They really they would pay to go.
Yeah. We've got 2 or 3 lined up right now. As soon as we get it to work, they're gone.
Can I ask how much they are willing to offer?
Well, essentially, because of the circumstances that happened when we did this, they're kind of like customers, but they're also investors. Okay, they wanted to put money in to make it happen because they wanted to go, and they didn't necessarily pay the same amount, but they also weren't going to the same place either. So they were the ones that kind of kick-started the whole thing off, and they're going to be the first ones out.
Would there be tests of little animals or insects or anything, sending them back and forth?
We're not going to get back into like every little animal, but we're going to do some small objects, and then we're going to do probably some, I don't know, gerbils or something. But see, what you got to understand is we're not dealing with some kind of like super strong force fields or something like that. the process that we're using is what happens every day when parallel universes split off, because decisions that we make and events that take place. So we're not dealing with something that's like an unknown in terms of what effect it might have on your body. It's not going to have any effect on your body, because we're not doing it. We're not using a technology that's like, like any of the cool stuff that you see in science fiction. That it's like they got all this equipment, and then you know what I'm talking about. We're not doing that kind of thing. It's not necessary. That's all based on old science ideas. This is quantum mechanics. It's a whole other ball of wax.
When it happens and we look back, would it seem so simple?
No, it is not. No, because it's complicated. Because there's more than one way of doing it. And then how do you know which way is going to be the best way? And again, and the breakthrough was figuring out that regardless of which way you do it, you still got to deal with that tuning thing, and that's the thing that's really the key. And so that was the deal.
You sent us a song on YouTube by Todd Rundgren. What's that all about?
Well, the interesting thing about it is, ever George Van Tassel?
Yeah.
All right. There was a recording online for a while, which it's not there anymore. But it had this it was like this equation that they gave him, and someone had converted it into like a sound or something. And at one point, it sounds exactly like this part of this Todd Rundgren tune that you have, which is called International Feel. Now, remember I talked about the tuning thing?
Mm-hmm.
Well, at the beginning of that song, you hear a tone.
Yes, you do. That's right.
And then it kind of sounds like a drill kind of trying to get started. And then you can imagine it going through whatever it's trying to drill through, and then it breaks through, right? That's analogous to quantum tunneling, all right, which is a quantum physics thing. It doesn't work exactly that way, but it is symbolic of that. Well, the funny thing about it is that tuning pit, the tuning part with the tone. If you have a tuning fork and you hit it, then you get a tone, right? And then from there on, that's the beginning of what's going on with the song. They have a tone before the tuning begins. So the thing about it is that song predicted what the solution was going to be for how we're going to try to do time travel. We knew there were some weird things about that tune for a long time.
That's amazing.
It just came to me the other day. And that beginning it really gets you.
If you had a chance to talk to Albert Einstein and you were telling him your plans for time travel, how impressed would he be?
He wouldn't even know. First of all, he didn't like quantum mechanics, all right? So I used to say, I play in the field where Einstein feared to tread. So it was like, basically, he would have to wrap his mind around the fact that this stuff really does work, and particularly the experiment where he proved that parallel universes are real. Because the solutions to real time travel don't come from relativity theory at all, and he didn't even like the idea. And that's the ironic thing about it. People keep trying to link relativity theory, whether it's general or special, to time travel, and they never find that solutions that they're looking for, particularly for time travel to the past. And it's not meant to. That's not where the answer is. That's not where Einstein's head was even at. And the whole time dilation thing is just an effect of what happens when you do things with strong magnetic fields or gravitational fields or high velocities. But it's not supposed to be trying to accomplish time travel. It's a side effect of what happens if you do those things. It's not a purpose. And that's the big thing about that.
Let's go to the phones now. They're lining up for you, Marsh. Let's go to Diana in Manhattan. Welcome to the program. Hi, Diana.
Hi, love your show.
Thank you.
Things. You're welcome. And by the way, I was born on May 28th, the same day as your mother.
Yeah,
Different
it's
year.
coming up.
Okay. But anyway, three things. First, the Philadelphia experiment in 1943 supposedly sent two sailors into the future and brought them back to 1943. Second, in a book called The Omniverse by Alfred Labremont Weber, which I heard about on your show, he maintains that the government has been using time travel for decades. And third, and I think most important thing, that man who purports to be from 2039, who said that he changed the timeline, which would account for the Mandela effect.
John Teeter.
Why not just, I'm sorry?
John Teeter was his name, I believe, right?
John Teeter,
Yeah.
Well, John Teeter, why not ask him how he did it and just do it the way you did it?
Interesting.
You talking to me?
Talking to you.
Well, first of all, if I got with any of these people that ask the right questions, find out pretty darn fast that there's a problem with their stories. So, I'm at the end of trying to do this for real because I take it seriously because I don't believe that we have very much time left. And so my life's on the line. I got a gun to my head. It's sort of Damocles, okay? And so I don't have time to mess around with people that have, because here's the thing. You want to talk about the Philadelphia experiment? I used to be rated as the number one researcher in the world on the Philadelphia experiment. I can tell you more stuff about it than you can imagine. But the thing about it is, we don't have time to mess around with that now because we can't do it for real. And now, not now. It's not going to get us anywhere. It's not going to get us to the time travel part because guess what? I'm sorry, but the time travel part was invented by Al Bielek, and he made it up because I investigated it, and I found out he lied about his background. He misappropriated another guy's father's identity out of Princeton at the archives. Why do I know that? Because I went there, boots on the ground. So the thing about it is I don't sit back and read this stuff and then, oh, wow, this must have happened. It must be true. I went out and investigated it back in the 90s. Okay, so all that stuff is completely worthless. I have to do it for real because I want to live.
What's the timetable, Marshall, on time travel? What's the timetable?
Here's the odd thing about it. The odd thing about it was that I was trying to beat what I call the 11-year prophecy. Long story short, there's this weird thing that happens. It began in 1957. Every 11 years, something significant takes place in my life that moves me toward, and other things toward, the realization of time travel and all that kind of thing. Well, what happens is I was going to try to beat it, and this is back in 2019. But guess what? COVID happened.
Oh, yes.
So that totally screwed everything. Guess what? Now, 2023, it's that date. It's that 11-year. This is the 11th year, and now everything's taken off like crazy. Now, figure that one out. So what we're doing is we're probably going to make it happen this year. And we'll either make it happen or we will be right on the verge of it doing it. But, we're so close now, it's ridiculous. And this is January still. So it's
I want you back when you make that announcement.
Well, yeah, we'll send it. We have a whole thing we're putting together how we're going to handle that.
Okay.
But, yeah, you'll know.
Let's go to Jason in Olympia, Washington, west of the Rockies. Hey, Jace, go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much, George, for taking my call, and thank you, Marshall.
Thank you.
I have just a couple questions. Your previous caller, God bless her heart, touched on Al Bielek and the experiment that happened there, the Montauk Project, the Philadelphia experiment in 1943. George had Al Bielek on February 25th, 2005, and it was a very interesting discussion, and it seems almost like with what you're speaking about is really broad strokes. Could you explain a little more clearly on what you're talking about with a little more thorough and more precise dates? And it just seems almost like you're painting broad strokes on.
Let me stop you here. As we'll get to the point. Here's the deal. I knew Al Bielek. Did you know Al Bielek personally?
No, I'm sure he didn't.
All right. So here's the deal. I knew Al Bielek. I knew his buddies. Found out about him it was around 92, something like that. I thoroughly investigated the story. I was privy to things that most people aren't privy to. And again, I actually investigated the thing thoroughly. And that, for me to explain about the Philadelphia experiment and what you don't know would be a whole show.
Oh, at
if you
least.
Want to talk about that? Have me on for the Philadelphia experiment. We can dedicate the whole show to it.
Well, Marshall, did the experiment occur with the government, or is it something that Bielek is making up?
Oh no! Here's a story. The experiment was real. I know it happened, but it didn't involve time travel, and they wouldn't even try to make it involve time travel. It was supposed to do.
It was a cloaking thing, wasn't it?
What they were doing And then we can prove this. I have a document, a letter about the radar part. They were trying to do the radar part, and they were also trying to do optical invisibility because you could see there was variations of how you could get them both at the same time.
They wanted to hide the ships.
Right. And they were trying to cloak them from primarily the German radars because the Germans, I like that, this Jacques Vallée article that was out there for a while, which I debunked. The Germans did have radar. We found photographs from World War II around, and actually before World War II even, where the Germans had ships with radar on them, like the Graf Spee and a number of other ships like that. So we know the Germans had radar. We also know, and because I talked to people who were on those boats for the Allied, the Merchant Marine and people like that, they were up in the North Sea route. They're called the Murmansk Run, and that's in the William Moore book. Okay, they even mention the Murmansk Run.
Yep.
That's where the Germans had their surface vessels, and they had radar. So I mean, like I could go into and again a whole show on this because I know more about it than anybody else does, and I did a full investigation on this. And so you could put me up against 100 skeptics, and I could beat them all in a court of law because I have the evidence and I investigated it. Most of the people that just run around spreading, stuff that they heard about, but I had physical evidence, like documents and things like that. It's like I've got a book that I want to put out, but I just hadn't had the time. But all the books, it's like a history book. I've got all these records from the National Research Development, whatever they used to call it, the NDRC, and all kinds of other things. But that's like if you want to talk about that, that's like a whole other show. Because it doesn't have anything.
Who was the second guy in that? Was Duncan Cameron? Do you recall that name?
I met Duncan. I know these people. Vincent Barbara. You can find out who he is. But Preston Nichols. I went to several events with Preston. I got Preston on a TV show locally. I mean, I know these people, and I remember what was happening when the story started to unravel. And the first thing out of Preston's mouth when we were talking initially was, I mentioned Al Bielek to him, and he goes, well, Al Bielek, he embellishes. And I found out later on what they meant. What they meant is that Al Bielek was a pathological liar, and sometimes he just couldn't help but make stuff up. And a classic example of that is when he said he broke from the mountaintop story, the main thing that they were talking about always. And he said, we went to the future, and we went I went personally as far as the wingmakers. And he didn't know because he didn't have the internet. The wingmakers had already been debunked by the guys. I was like, Citizens for UFO Secrecy, their attorney helped debunk that whole wingmaker story. But he didn't know about it because he didn't have the internet. And for some reason, Nexus ran that story again after it had already been debunked on the internet, and that's when Bielek saw it, and he thought, oh, wow, this is something new. I should add it to my story. Even though it's completely against everything that he'd been talking about before. And then people were like, what the heck is he doing? And that's why, because he was making it up. And he played everybody, and I'm sorry, those are the facts.
Let's go to Andrew, truck driving in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show. Hi, Andrew.
Hey, George, long-time listener. I appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, it'd be nice if you and Tom could possibly in the future make it up to Minnesota or Wisconsin, like Madison or Minneapolis, one of these days.
Minneapolis could be in the cards.
Hey, that sounds great. So my question is, so let's say that you time travel, you're out in the middle of an open field, and you go into the future, you go into the past, and now there's a building right in that exact spot or a tree right in that exact spot. Do you become infused with that building or tree?
Well, first of all, one of the things you have to do is you have to know where you're going. And so what we would do is, number one, no one wants to go to the future. Okay, let's just get rid of that idea. And it's a hassle to try to do it because the easiest way to do it is through relativity, but then you're going to need a space program. So, that goes out.
So you're saying everything's going to be the past, whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever we do is going to be in the past. And then you can determine what's going on. For example, when I'm thinking about we're going 1971. Okay, let me take that for example. So what happens is we find a shopping mall that was made then, and what happens is we figure out, okay, we're going to go to this particular spot in this parking lot, and the reason we go to that spot is because we know they didn't park stuff there. and chances are there's not going to be anything there when we go there. And we go at a particular time when nobody else is around, and so you do your research that way. You don't just take a random, go to an open field. I mean, you can't do much prediction on that because the same kind of thing you talked about. But you'd have to know. I mean, because you mentioned like when they put a building there. Well, you can check for that kind of thing. But those are the kind of things you have to do. I mean, this isn't. I don't know how to explain it. This is serious business. We're not joking around. It's like that song by the Talking Heads, Dave Byrne. This ain't no party. This ain't no disco. This ain't no fooling around.
Are other countries working on this too, Marshall, in tandem with whatever you folks are doing?
No. As far as we know, they're not, and we've not been approached by another country per se. There's some people in another country that are interested. I haven't done anything about it yet, but they were talking to me. But as far as I know, for certain there isn't another country doing it. It could be. I mean, secret programs happen all the time. I've got a secret program, So that's about the only thing I can say about it.
Marshall, I've got a couple websites for you. Is there one that you recommend?
There's one that I don't know. Last time I looked at the page he had up, it wasn't on there, and that was about.me and then / Earth 12KB4, which is Earth and then the number 12, written out, and then K and then B and then 4. So Earth, it's called about.me / Earth 12KB4. Go there because there's a lot of other stuff that you can hit off of that one.
And your book's still available?
Yes, absolutely.
Paradox Lost and the Black Holes and Time Tunnels. We're going to come back in a moment with Marshall Barnes and take final phone calls as we talk about the incredible work of time travel and parallel universes right here on Coast to Coast AM. Don't touch your dial. Next hour, Suzanne Falter joins us. The name of her book, it'll tell you every reason she's on, Free-Spirited, How My Daughter Healed Me from the Afterlife. So get ready for that. That'll be next hour on Coast to Coast. We'll come back with final calls with Marshall Barnes in just a moment on Coast to Coast. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, back with Marshall Barnes as we talk about time travel and parallel universes. We'll take your final calls as well. Marshall, how long have you been at this? This is amazing work you're doing.
Well, in terms of being serious about actually doing it instead of just researching the subject, I would say probably about 2000, something like that.
20-some years. What got you interested in doing this?
Because I wanted to live. Because I didn't think there was a future. I mean, that's when I got really serious about actually doing it. That was around 2015. And that's when I realized, oh, this is not looking good, and it was basically, hey, it's be prepared to get out of here, or face the consequences. So I was serious. I'm not kidding. I mean, people think, oh, he's just. I don't know that people think, but they don't have the seriousness I have. Okay, I really don't think that this world's going to last, or our civilization's going to last, very much longer. I would give it. Let's say, if I want to be cautious, I'd give it 5 years or less.
Jeez.
Okay? That's why I want to get out of here. I mean, I was trying to get out of here before COVID happened. Then COVID happened, slowed everything down, but we still made progress. So, and now we're at the point where I think we're going to be able to break through and get out of here, or start to this year.
Now, when you say get out of here, you're going back into the past? Are you going to stay there?
Yeah. If this place is going down the toilet, why would I want to come back?
Well, eventually, isn't it going to happen again?
Well, years later, I mean.
Well, how far back are you going to go?
Well, all right, for some people, because people can't decide on going to the same place within the 20th century or whatever. We're saying, look, okay, go back 12,000 years, where it's safe, and restart civilization all over again. That's one option. But for other people, they have a specific spot. They had the money to pay for it, and that's where they're going to go. I'm going to help get everything set up so that we can restart that civilization, but then I'm going where I want to go, which is going to be somewhere, in the 80s or 70s. I'm not gonna stick with the restart.
Yeah, you want running water, right?
Well, I mean, no, but here's the deal: the restart, we're gonna ship over or ship back or whatever how you want to call it, the equipment to set up a modern civilization back then. We're not talking about roughing it. I mean, initially the people that are going to be there are going to be roughing it, but it's going to be setting up, buildings, plumbing, everything. We're going to need people are going to be getting hired to work there. It's going to be crazy.
This is the one thing I've always been fascinated by time travel. How do you know how to get back to a certain time period? How do you do that?
Well, good thing you asked that question. Here's why. I can't tell you. Why? Because that kind of qualifies with trying to set up the telemetry for like a missile system or something. Because
right.
That's okay. And the thing is, the science, before you figure out how to actually make it work as actual time travel, you can weaponize it. And that's something we've already done. And that's one reason why the Russians are having such a bad problem in Ukraine, is because back in February of last year, I decided we were going to test this stuff out again, because we've done it before. We're going to test this out on the Russians, because we had different equipment and all that kind of stuff than what we had back in the wake of 9/11. So we did that, and I sent you a copy of what I call the order thing, where you say, that's what we're going to do, and that order was only 5 things that we had on that. And then the thing about it was, here it is. I got it right in front of me. Number 1, cause a massive disruption of the convoy heading to Kyiv, which will include explosions and Russian soldiers getting wiped out. 2, deaths of more high-ranking Russian military. 3, failure and crashing of Russian aircraft. 3. 4, increasing failures of Russian military objectives with a loss of equipment, weapons, and personnel. And 5, Putin falling in ill health, sparking rumors that he may die or step down. And all those things happened.
All those things are happening.
Yeah, and that was the date on that was March 1st. And none of those things had really happened like that at that point. But March 3rd, things happened to such an extent, the media for the first time was saying, whoa, this might be a stalemate. Now it's like they're kicking Russia's butt, and we're considering getting involved again with a new setup to try to end the war. But this is why this is no joke, because the approach that we're using to do what you're talking about, like how do you go where you want to go, that's being used as a military option as far as how this stuff works from a military point of view. And that goes back to Bearden. When I was, remember the 8 hours I spent with Bearden? Right, exactly. So that's the roots of that, going back to Bearden. So, this is serious business. This is no joke at all. And that's why I can't tell people exactly how to do the time travel thing, because then they could do this. And then you got total chaos.
Big time. Let's go back to the final calls. Mayat's with us in New York. Hello, Mayat. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. Such an excellent guest. Thank you, Marshall, for your explorations. Very intriguing. And I have, a brief 4-parter. Please note, and I'll listen over the air. First, your thoughts on certain groups of ETs possibly being travelers from the future. I'd like to know whether out-of-body astral projection and other metaphysical spiritual practices might bring some insight into your work. Third, I'd like you to flesh out Diana's question around, for a period of time, a regular coast guest, John Titor's story and his predictions, including a coming civil war in the U.S., and lastly, your recommendations of authors and books, particularly around time travel of speculative fiction. I hope you have my questions. George usually does, too. Thank you, George.
Take the first couple, and I've got the second ones written down for you.
All right. Well, let's see. On the alien thing, I don't know, because the aliens aren't really my bag, but we did have an intrusion by somebody from an advanced civilization, not here. I think it was from a parallel universe, where they used a device to cause a screen to kind of appear not in our frequency basically range, because it only showed up for a second. But we were able to show that they were using this thing to observe what was going on. And what was going on was a testing of an idea by Akira Haranov, is a Israeli physicist, on how to use quantum measurements to try to control a time machine. And this thing shows up. I don't know if you put it on the website or not, George, but you can find it elsewhere. It's sometimes called the face.
Right.
But basically, it's amazing. If you look at my stuff enough, you'll find it there if it's not on the Coast to Coast website. But at any rate, I don't know what else is going on with aliens. That's not really my bag. As far as astral projection and a lot of that kind of stuff goes, unless something is an objective, I don't get involved with it. And I can't. And if someone's doing an astral projection, they know what's going on, but we can't know. So it's subjective. So I can't really tell you about that.
Are you familiar with
the rest of it, George? Right?
You familiar with the John Teeter time travel story?
Yeah, I know all about them, of course. Yeah,
and of course he talks about
it. Oh, the Civil War. You talk about the Civil War thing from that?
Yeah.
Well, sure. The thing is that, and all you have to do is look at what's going on in the country and predict the Civil War. I remember going to a gun show back in I think it was it was before the '98. It was like '97, and there was already books about the next Civil War and all that kind of stuff. So that a lot of the Teeter projections came out of that culture where there's been a Civil War in the future, and then the Russians got involved, and whatever else the scenario went. But I mean, you could just look at. In fact, remember Y2K? Remember that?
Yeah.
Art Bell
2000.
had a lot of these guests on, and they were talking about the Y2K is going to set everything back, and we're going to have to revert to these different ways of living and all this stuff, and that's where the Teeter stuff came out of. So, and besides the fact, the physics about how he was going to try to do it, I know where it came from, and it wouldn't be applicable. I mean, you couldn't do it that way. I mean, he used a lot of lingo stemming from the parallel universe ideas, but he didn't understand the intricacies and inherent nature of how it actually operate. So it was generalistic. What can I say?
And what about books on time travel? Plus, you're too.
There's not a lot of good ones out there because the people have been relying on Einstein's work too much. Tim Swartz has a good time travel book out there from an anecdotal point of view. Also, I can look for Jenny Randall's stuff. She did some good research on.
Did.
Right. Jenny Randall, that's some good stuff there. And that's basically about time slips and those kind of natural phenomena which need to be investigated more. And so, that I would suggest that stuff for time travel.
All right, next up, let's go to Mark in Ohio. Welcome to the program. Hi, Mark. Go ahead.
Hey, George. It's been a while since I got into you.
Good. Welcome back.
Yeah. Marshall, I got to say, you're one of the most interesting guys that George has ever had. I'm comparing you to Richard C. Hoagland, Michio Kaku. George knows all these. He's had him on several times. And Brian Greene, the physicist Brian Greene?
I know who he is. I don't know him personally. But I do know Richard personally.
Right. Yeah, right. You don't play golf with him.
No.
Anyway, Greene is a heck of a. He got his PhD at Oxford, didn't he, George?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, particle physicist, right? I think, George.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Greene came out with an elegant universe, Marshall.
Right, I know about it.
He put it on DVD about
we're talking years ago now. Greene, Stephen Hawking, all those kind of guys. That's my peer group. I have to compare what I'm working on versus what they're doing, and how it has to shake out and be accurate. So, and then sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're a brilliant guy. I want to compliment you too. Again, you should have been a lecturer at a university. I would have loved to have sat in one of your classes. But my degree is in biology, not physics. I wish it was in physics rather than bio. Maybe I should have made it. But anyway, Marshall, and this article was in Scientific American magazine. I kept these all over the years out of 2010, and it says this time really exists. Back then physicists weren't sure. Well, maybe some of them aren't anyway. Now I weren't sure of time. it may come out of our conscious mind or subconscious, but this last paragraph down the lower right-hand side of the page says, according to some physicists, time may arise from the way that the universe is partitioned, and that sounds like what you said before about an hour ago. A succession of parallel universes, No, that's not. Let me correct you. Number one, what they're talking about is not the same thing as a parallel universe idea. And number two, the theory, I don't know the complete thing what they're talking about, but it's very simple. My thing is based on, stems off of relativity theory, where we take it literally, and the purpose of time is to allow things to happen. Space is where they happen. If you don't have time, nothing can happen. Time is not emergent. Time is fundamental. Carlo Rovelli, whatever his name is, he runs around. He talks out of both sides of his head. Look, it's very simple. It's not. They're trying to make it really difficult. I don't know why they can't wrap their minds around it, but that's just the way it works. And in the end, I think we'll discover that time is actually literally a part of space, but it's just this functions differently. So, but the thing is, it's real. It's physical. It's real, and that's it.
How many people you bringing with you, Marshall?
I don't know yet because we got some time yet. We're still raising money. We're selling art to fund it, and then we'll probably have some people that want to, help make things happen in another way. But eventually it could be a lot of people depending on how much time you've got, and it depends on how many people want to get involved. But it's like hundreds, thousands. But you're committed to this project. Yeah, I'm committed to getting it off the ground and letting it function. I had a meeting today with somebody that I want to talk to you about taking it over, so I don't have to be saddled with it. But the thing about it is, we're serious. Here's the deal. We're serious because we don't want to die. You can't get any more. Remember this. Think of this. Okay, it's it's not even February. It's like January 31st, and you're in Ukraine, okay? And you think everything is going to be going well, and there's all kinds of rumors about maybe Russians might do something, but they're not really going to invade. That's just Putin talking, right? And then you go to
and look what happened. Marshall, thanks again for being on the program. Always good talking to you. Up next, Suzanne Falter joins us as we talk about the other side. Up next, Suzanne Falter joins us. You're going to hear a very incredible, heartwarming story from her, and then we'll take calls next hour. We'll explain that. So we'll give you some help and advice about those loved ones that you have had that are no longer with us. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Let me tell you about Suzanne Falter, is the author of a memoir about her daughter Teal's death called Free-Spirited, How My Daughter Healed Me from the Afterlife. She is an intuitive healer who helps people suffering from upset, confusion, and stress. And she also hosts the Self-Care for Extremely Busy Women podcast, where she brings better self-care to thousands of busy people every week in 98 countries around the globe. Suzanne, welcome, and I bet that's grown, hasn't it?
It has, George. Hello, and I'm so pleased to talk to you again.
How are you?
I'm really great. I'm better than ever, as a matter of fact.
Good for you. Good for you. How far back did this tragedy occur for you?
It was in 2012 that Teal died, 10 years ago.
10 years ago, my gosh. Seems just like yesterday sometimes.
Well, yeah. Yeah, there is but life happens in the blink of an eye, right? 1 minute she was there, the next minute she was gone. And my healing and her presence and the whole evolution, it's been like 100 years in some ways.
Yeah. How old was she when she passed?
She was 22 years old.
Oh, that was young. What happened to her?
Well, when she died, it was a very, very, very unexpected thing. She was, we had dinner in a restaurant, actually, and she was acting a little strange, a little spacey. And, we'd gone to see a little lecture about some shamans. And she kept turning around and staring at me every time they talked about the connection between shamans and the people who've departed in the afterlife. And I thought, well, she's acting a little weird, but I'm not going to worry about it too much. Teal had epilepsy, very well controlled, took her meds, took excellent care of herself. And so basically what happened is she went home and had a complete cardiac arrest and collapsed in an empty bathroom that she had locked herself into.
Oh, my God.
And she was without a heartbeat for 15 minutes until her housemate realized she was in there with the door locked and unresponsive, and he jimmied the door open. She was actually revived, and her heartbeat was started again, and she was in a coma for 6 days on life support, and then they finally determined her brain was just, too far gone, and she had to be taken off of life support. But the truth is that the whole experience of that 6 days in the hospital was so incredible. And, let me just say that I was a driven workaholic. I was out of touch with myself. I was moving at galactic speed through my life. I was so preoccupied with making money and getting to my goals and all of this, I'd forgotten about what really mattered in life, which was something she knew intimately. There's never been a cause of death, George. For 2 years, the medical examiner held on to her tissue. They never could figure it out. Cause of death unknown, it says on her death certificate.
At what point did this tragedy start turning around for you?
At what point did it turn me around?
Turn around, where things started happening.
Well, this was what was so incredible about that time in the hospital. Because I went into that room where she was all laid out on the gurney and she was covered with wires and wrapping and all that kind of stuff. And I could feel that she was going to die and my life would be changed and that I would do this thing that she had wanted to do, which was heal people. The crazy thing about this was that the day after she collapsed, she was going to start taking classes to become a healer. And she really thought that she was going to become that healer. She thought that she was going to have a whole career as a healer. But in fact, I was the one who has ended up doing this.
Hey, you weren't doing that prior to, were you?
No, I was a marketing consultant. And craziest thing is, I had just closed my business because I was a total burnout case. I had absolutely no ability to keep working. I was exhausted. I was stressed out. My relationship had just ended. I had moved out of the house we'd been living in. I was driving around in my little car and trying to figure out what city I wanted to live in. I had moved to the Bay Area, and I didn't know anybody. I mean, the whole thing was just like a complete surrender of everything I knew, everything. And then here comes Teal, and she's out here in California with me, and all of a sudden she dies. And it was just like I had this plunge into this experience of having no roadmap, not having any idea what I was going to do or how I was going to cope with the worst tragedy of my life, and I was alone.
When you gave birth to her,
yeah,
didn't something strange happen then too?
Oh yeah. And again, when she died, this was the weirdest thing. I had a C-section, and during the C-section, they gave me morphine. And
for some who don't know what that is, it's a cesarean where they slice you right above the area there, and they pulled the little baby out of your stomach area.
That's right. And because I had that surgery, I was on morphine. So while I was on morphine, I suddenly could see all the auras of everybody who attended me in the hospital. And not only could I see their auras, I could feel the truth of who they are, what they were going through. I could read their emotions. I could feel deeply into who they were. When Teal was dying in the hospital, I was sitting with her figure on the bed, on the hospital bed. I was sitting next to her, and I was holding her hand, and I felt her spirit lift out of her body. I just intuitively felt it. And it was a profound spiritual experience. I just felt like, it's almost undescribable, but I felt like a great presence had filled the room and then swoosh, just left it. And I went into the rest of the hospital to just kind of walk around and clear my head. And again, I could see people's auras. I could feel what they were feeling. I knew what they were going through. Attendants, residents, doctors, large families, pregnant women, med students. They were unsheltered people walking around because it was San Francisco General Hospital. They serve everybody. And I felt so connected to everybody in that hospital. It was the same experience.
That is amazing. Now, when we first talked back in January of a couple of years ago, your book was out, The Joy of Letting Go.
Oh, it was the self-care for extremely busy women,
and
actually.
That one, too.
I have done multiple books. But, yeah, the self-care book, it came out because, I was really taught self-care by this whole experience. Like I said, from the beginning of Teal's collapse and her subsequent death, I was always being guided to this other bigger purpose. I just knew it. And I knew that I was meant to do the healing work that Teal was never going to be able to do through many, many means. And one of them was to publish that self-care book and do the self-care podcast and do, all these subsequent things that have come.
Did you start doing the healing, Suzanne, in memory of Teal, or was this something that you truly wanted to do at that moment?
Both. I felt like I was given the work, and I accepted it, and I felt very connected to it. I had been an energy healer in my 20s. For 1 year, it just sort of came in this big whoosh, and I did it, and then one day I just let go of it because I really thought what I was supposed to be doing was writing books, and I went on to write a number of books. But that healing work left me with the impression that it would be back. And then when she passed away and I started to do the self-care work, and I had to heal myself, George. This is the thing. I was so driven. I was such a wreck. I was so stressed out. I was at the bottom of my life.
I bet.
Really.
I bet.
And there were many, many visits from Teal energetically. There were many moments where Teal showed me visions. There were moments where I felt her energy in my body, and I still do to this day. It has been a profound experience in not only the reality of the afterlife, but the power of it. And the power of it to change who we are fundamentally, to bring us back to our better, higher selves, and to show us there really is a reason for everything.
And what's so amazing is she still is with you as your daughter, and you're her mother, and she won't let that go.
It's really funny you should say that, because she liked to joke around when she was a human, right? When she was walking around in a body. And one day she actually said to me, she started really showing up energetically as this kind of funny little, I call it a silvery laugh, just sort of this beautiful little energetic hit that would erupt from my mouth as this sort of strange, high-pitched laughter. And it was often in confirmation to things. And I was always just so sort of gobsmacked, like, why is this happening to me? Because it was so weird. But one day she said, I'm not your daughter anymore. You can call me Tefcat. And what is Tefcat? Tefkat. It's an acronym, and it means the energy formerly known as Teal.
I love that. The energy that she has passed on to you has been dramatic, hasn't it?
Well, it feels, dramatic is not the word I would use because it feels very real and it feels very normal in a funny way.
But you didn't have it before.
No, I didn't. And it's enhanced. I mean, I kind of had a seed of it because I've always had a connection to my spirit guides. But the energy that I have really kind of, I'd say, cultivated since her death is, first of all, the confidence that I understand and can use these gifts. I think a lot of us are given gifts and we're afraid of them, or we're given gifts and we don't know what to do with them, or we're not given gifts, but we're even afraid to ask for help. I had to move through all the spaces of slowing down and coming back into myself and becoming ready to really surrender to the full depth of Teal's healing gift. And that has been a long process, 10 years, George. Well, maybe 8. But,
that is a long time.
Yeah.
What took you so long to write Free Spirited?
Oh, my God. The story wasn't over yet. I kept trying to end it, and it was too soon.
And it's still not over.
Apparently not. It really isn't. And who knows, maybe I'll publish a different edition down the road with another ending. But, I had attracted an agent at one point, a literary agent, who was interested in trying to find a publisher for the book. And that agent took me through multiple variations of this book. And every single time I wrote it, one time it was entirely about Teal and her life, because she was so extraordinary during her life, and she had such a deeply, deeply compassionate ability to feel into people and listen to them and understand them. And, another draft was all about the organ donation story, because that was a whole huge thing. We donated her organs.
That's huge. That's right.
And, and the young woman who got her heart and kidney, who was only a few years older than Teal, I mean, her story's incredible. And her mother and I got to be very, very tightly connected and went out and gave speeches together.
Oh, well, let me ask you this, though. I mean, Teal died of a heart attack, right?
Cardiac arrest, yeah, but basically.
Yet you donated her heart? Wasn't it damaged?
Isn't that strange? I was dubious, believe me. But, in fact, they stabilized her heart, and they realized the real problem, the thing that killed her, was the brain damage that resulted from not having enough oxygen. But her heart picked right up where it left off, and it was fine. And I actually spoke to a cardiologist who was a friend afterwards, who said because of her age and her health, her heart was just, it just basically had the reset button.
It was only 22 years old.
Right. And she was not a unhealthy person, except for the fact that she had a seizure disorder, and that would periodically sort of short circuit her body. And the interesting thing was, she was a terribly sensitive person, terribly sensitive. I learned after her death from her journals that she could feel the energy in a potato if she was served a baked potato at dinner, and see who grew it.
That is amazing. Who got her organs?
Well, we know that a woman in her 50s got her pancreas, and another woman with children, maybe in her 30s or 40s, got one of her kidneys, and then this beautiful young woman that I mentioned earlier got her heart and her kidney.
Still ticking?
Oh, yeah. And what's really cool, Teal wanted to be a healer, so the minute she was struck down, we said, okay, donate her organs. That's one way she can heal people. Okay, great. We had no idea it would become a bigger thing.
That's amazing.
This young woman works in hospitals helping people who have heart issues with the diagnostic imagery. She does the tests on their hearts.
Wow. That is the echo tests and things like that. That
exactly.
is something. You know what they say, I've always heard this, that people who receive organs from others who have passed on pick up recollections of that person or symptoms of that person. Has that happened to any of these recipients?
Well, the only recipient we've met is the heart and kidney recipient. And what was really notable for her, according to her mother, she never liked to travel. She was a kind of homebody. But in Teal's life, Teal went all over the world with her little travel guitar in her backpack because she was a blues singer, and she would perform on the street. Well, this young lady decided she really wanted to travel, and she did a lot of international travel after she got Teal's heart. I think the coolest story, though, and going back to that experience of seeing the auras and, all the intuitive hits that I was getting around her birth and death, the mother of this young woman who got the heart went in to see her daughter in the recovery room between the two surgeries for the heart and the kidney.
Yeah, They couldn't do it all at once.
Yeah,
it's too much.
Right. And she was not conscious, of course. She was sedated and she was asleep. The mom walks in the room and sees this beautiful glow all around her body.
Like an aura?
Yeah, and it was really bright. She said it was as bright as a pair of headlights.
Probably teal.
Well, one would think. So then she thinks, I'm seeing things, and she says, she's glowing. And the nurse says, well, she has circulation, so she has pink cheeks again. She said, no, she's glowing. The nurse didn't see it. Then her sister walks in, and her sister immediately says, oh, my God, she's glowing. And, that is healing energy. That's the good stuff. That's the gold that we want to touch when we're in pain, right?
What happened to the heart of the initial recipient before they got Teal's heart? What was wrong with hers?
Oh, okay. So she had congestive heart failure. And congestive heart failure, maybe some people listening even have some experience with this. It's a very debilitating disease.
Yeah, that's what Bobby Darin, the singer, had. He died at 37.
Exactly. She got it from a virus. And for 8 years, she had this thing, and she had tried pacemakers, and her body rejected the pacemakers because she was very thin, and there wasn't enough kind of flesh in her chest, basically, to be able to make the pacemaker really work, because it's a piece of equipment, you have to hold in your body. And she almost died 3 times. Her mother is one of the most extraordinary women, Debbie. She's a warrior, boy. She inspired me hugely. We became great friends during this whole process, and I was really grateful for my connection.
When you meet the daughter, the recipient, do you feel special with her?
It's really interesting because I felt gratified, but I also felt like her heart was Teal's heart. And I felt kind of motherly towards her.
Yeah,
that is
exactly.
True. That is true. But I also was really aware that our hearts are interchangeable. That we're all ultimately these people walking around with the same set of needs, core needs, and these bodies that are really, if the parts are interchangeable, how different can we be?
Hold on, Suzanne. We're going to take a short break. We'll come back and chat more on Coast to Coast AM. Next hour, we'll take your calls with Suzanne Falter. Now, she's not a medium, so it's not going to be those kinds of questions that we want. But if you do want some advice with someone who has passed to help you, she'll be able to chat with you about that. But you're going to ask her a question about what we're talking about as well. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, Suzanne Falter with us. Suzanne, tell us, how often does Teal come back?
Well, I can pretty much pull her energy towards me as I need to, but I feel her often, and kind of often unexpectedly, just sort of a little sparkly essence kind of peering over my shoulder, per se. The laughter has subsided a little, but sometimes it really comes in. And it's, I don't know, that's just kind of, like I said, it's sort of a confirmation. And it's strange because, people are telling me their problems and I'm laughing, and I'm not laughing. It's just how she presents her ideas. And sometimes there's no laughter and it's just a feeling. But I don't know, I never feel like she's terribly far away, that's for sure.
What do you think she wants at this point?
Pardon me?
What does she want at this point?
What does she want?
Yeah, with you.
What does she want from me? Well, she wants me to do what's right in every moment. And sometimes the messages are just for me, George. It's like, when she was alive, she was a really she was sort of my compassion cop, She would really direct me if I was being bossy. And I was kind of had a hard edge to me, for sure, in her lifetime. And, if she felt I was being too bossy or directive, even if I beeped at somebody in my car, she'd say, Mom, what are you doing? That's terrible, Her feeling was that we had to treat each other with loving kindness. And that's how she was. Her friends used to call her Kuan Yin, Kuan Yin was the goddess of compassion. And she was all about the goddesses, So I think that's what she really wanted for me and for all of us, is to be able to understand the deep interconnection between people. In her lifetime, she used to talk about the unified field of love, and I really got this after her death as well. The unified field of love is this space, it's like a sea we all swim in which we really can feel each other's energy and we know each other. Even if consciously we're annoyed with the other person, we are still interconnected. And believe me, that was so driven home with the organ donation experience.
I bet.
But that deep interconnection, it's there, it's real. We've just forgotten about it.
Tell us about the encounter with a shaman.
That was really interesting.
What happened?
So I was losing a child is very hard stuff.
It's the worst thing a parent can go through.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just kind of wrecked for about 3 years.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I did a lot of connecting to Teal in my car. For some reason, driving put me in that sort of alpha state.
That mood.
I could relax, right?
Yep.
And so I was driving from the city I lived in up to the wine country, to kind of a little country town where I had lived and spent some time. It was very comforting me up that way. And I was praying to her while I drove, show me the next right thing I need to do. And as I got to the little town, I went into a little tea parlor where I like to stop and have tea. And I was standing there, and I looked out the door, and this woman was looking at me very intently. And I hadn't seen her. It was somebody I knew, but I hadn't seen her for 3 or 4 years. And she was, in fact, a shaman who Teal had studied with right before she died. And she knew Teal had died, but we hadn't really spoken. And she came in and sat down with me, and we talked, and she started to channel. And, in fact, I wrote down what she wrote, what she channeled. She channeled this message from Teal, and the message was all about why her heart was so vulnerable in her lifetime, and how shocked she was, and how that she died, and how hard it was for her to understand what was happening to her, and how deeply and painfully she felt life. And, she said in the channeling, my heart's journey was really to start to impart information from another dimension so people could hear the wisdom of my heart and other hearts. She said, I couldn't do that in my body when I was alive. I wasn't evolved enough to understand that to heal the heart I had to experience all that my heart was harboring. She gave me this beautiful, profound message. And then she said, I think there's a podcast you're supposed to do. Podcast.
Out of the blue, she said that?
Yeah. She just looked right at me and she said, I think there's a podcast. And she started to really get in touch with what this podcast was. And it was an early precursor to the self-care show. And she described the whole thing to me. And what was really cool, George, was that then I got back in the car to go home later, and I turned on the radio. Now, the radio was connected to an old iPod shuffle, and I always liked how spontaneous it was. And I have 2,500 songs on my shuffle, right?
Yeah.
It was packed. And on it came some music of Teal's that I immediately knew would be the introduction for the podcast. It was just the coolest thing. It all came together really, really well.
Magical.
Yeah.
Now, also, you had a Facebook page, and what happened to that?
Well, I had a Facebook group. I still have it, the self-care group for extremely busy women. And that Facebook group was just this kind of crazy experience where, I did my thing, and I was, bringing people back to deeper self-care. And what happens? But one morning I wake up. I had about 10,000 people in the group. It was going well.
That's
I was
huge.
Pleased with it. It was really cooking along. So I wake up one morning, George, and there are 1,270 people who want to join the group. That was weird. So I'm assuming it's like one person with 1,270 profiles, or I don't know, a robot or something. I thought it was some sort of weird mistake. So 1,270, it's weird. So I go in and look, it's 1,270 women who want to join this group. The next day, there was 2,500.
Wow.
The next day after that, there was 5,000.
Doubling.
In 6
Doubling.
weeks, we got 110,000 people who wanted to join this group.
Where'd they come from?
Well, I can't tell you. But what was really interesting was I had, all through this whole process of losing Teal and rebuilding my life and bringing in the healing work, I've been working with my own mediums and astrologers. And this wonderful astrologer said to me, "Oh, I see in February of 2021, you're going to have a big spike of activity. There's just going to be so much focus on you and your work and real visibility." And, he said, maybe you'll get a TV show. Who knows, And what it was this big influx of people coming in on Facebook. And we ended up vetting all of them, and we let in about 55,000, and they're still there. And
That's
that
amazing.
group of people just came out of nowhere, and then it tapered off, just the way it had come in. It was just this really interesting kind of explosion of Teal energy is kind of how I think of it.
Suzanne, what has this told you about the other side that you didn't know before?
Well, the reality of it. I mean, there have been so many moments where, a medium said to me, you're going to have a time when you need to hear about a book from someone named Rose. So I'm at a spa in Northern California, and I run into this woman I vaguely knew. I couldn't remember her name. Her name is Rose. And she, the psychic had said she has a book that Teal wants you to know about. So Rose is chatting with me, and she starts telling me about Anita Morjani's book, Dying to Be Me, which is all about, transformation from the afterlife.
I'm going to be with her this weekend.
Oh, she's so great.
Yeah.
Tell her I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I look down on the ground, and there's a guitar pick, one of the guitar picks, just like Teal used to use, on the ground right in front of me as we're talking about this. That's a sign. To me, that's a sign.
Yeah.
And it taught me that, you ask to be healed, the healing will come. I was willing to do the work. I was willing to change my life. I was willing to become a better person, which is what I knew I had to become when I saw Teal all stretched out in the hospital. There's just no choice. I learned to surrender. The afterlife connection showed me not only how real it is, but if you surrender and you allow it to guide you, it will take you where you need to go. And I am happy, healthy, whole, doing work that helps people, and talking to you and feeling like everything is just as it should be. And that even when we're in a deep crisis, that is our springboard to deeper happiness.
Your sister had a vision of Teal, too, didn't she? What happened there?
Okay. So, interestingly, my sister was an organ donation coordinator in her life for a while, and she's also somebody who has a feeling for certain things intuitively. In the middle of the night, she woke up, and there was an energy around her, and she just spontaneously said, "Teal, is that you?" And it was. And she said, "Do you have a message for me?" And Teal said, "Tell Mom to write the book about organ donation." Now, the book was already something I was cooking on. My sister had no idea that I was actually writing a book. I'm a writer, so she figured, okay, she must be working on something new. But she didn't know that it was about the organ donation story. She didn't know what it was about. I was actually writing fiction at the time, mostly. But this was what was so interesting, because that very next day, I was giving my first speech to an audience of people who did these organ donations, people in the organ transplantation community. And, in came Teal giving her this message. And I just thought that was pretty cool. So she comes back to me and she says, "You should write the book about organ donation." And I filed that away. A year later, I'm getting the same message from the literary agent and all these people. So in the end, I ended up putting organ donation in the book, but it was not the only message of the book.
Did all of this help heal you as you now help heal other people?
Oh, yeah. I have had this path of having to be terribly hard on myself and really just kind of relentlessly driven and having to be a perfectionist and having to be the best person at something and being too competitive and struggling, George, just really struggling. But the connection to Teal and all the little ways that her energy drifted through me and reading the entries in her beautiful journal she left behind, all of these things have led me to a place of surrender where I just realized so many key things about life that released me from having to be so hard on myself. I don't have to do it perfectly anymore. I can ask people for help. I can allow myself to experiment and make mistakes. I can allow myself to not know how things are going to turn out. And when it begins with us at that level, then we can be more present to other people. We can stop suffering so much and have more fun. You know, that's kind of what I think the big takeaway has been. I mean, now I'm happily married. I live in a place I love. We've got a great life together and a wonderful dog. And, you know.
Did you have any other children?
Yes. I have a son who's almost 30, and he's an adventurer. He's going up to Alaska in the next few weeks, and he's just a guy who, it's interesting. When Teal died, the EMTs revived her heart, but they weren't really able to bring her back beyond that.
Right.
And so the first thing he did after her death was to become an EMT. And he really wanted to understand what that whole process was. Oh, yeah.
It had an effect on him, too, then.
It did. But then, get this. Of course, I told you earlier that the cause of her death was unknown. And so Luke went to work for a medical examiner and became an autopsy technician and did that work for 4 years and learned all about autopsy and got in touch with a real, desire to help people himself. And I'm very proud of him.
That's fantastic. And what has this done for you in terms of your belief systems?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What has this done for you in terms of your belief systems of the other side?
Well, I always believed in a greater spiritual presence. But this, I think the big thing this has done for me is really waken up my compassion. Because I was too focused on my agenda. The night of Teal's collapse, I wanted her to meet my new friend at dinner. I wasn't really paying attention to what strange shape Teal was in.
Right.
And I was very self-involved. I just wasn't able to see past the end of my own nose, and to understand that there are people out there who are suffering who I might help or I might feel for. And I had some experiences along the way that I write about in the book where I really connected. I mean, in the hospital, while she was dying, I went for a walk, and there was a homeless guy standing in a hallway by himself and just kind of standing there. And I might have avoided that person prior, but something in me made me go down that hallway. And I stood near him, and I called one of her friends, one of Teal's friends, and I told them that she was dying. And this fellow heard me, and he was watching me. And after I hung up the phone, I just went right up to him, and I said, "My daughter's dying."
To the homeless guy?
Yeah. And he said, I know, I heard you talking. He said, "I'm so sorry." And I said, "Thank you." He said, "I have a daughter. I need to go see her, don't I?" And I said, "You certainly do."
Absolutely. Suzanne, we're going to come back and take calls with you next. As I mentioned, she's not a psychic. She's not a medium, but she will give you advice if you need it or if you just have a question. Well, we're going to open up the phone lines next with Suzanne Falter and give you an opportunity to chat with her or get some advice from her as well. And welcome back, Suzanne Falter with us. Suzanne, as we take calls, what kind of advice do you give people who are in bereavement?
Oh, well, the thing about grief is you have to let it run its course, and nobody really wants to hear this advice. So the first thing to remember, of course, is that part of your brain is actually disabled. The part of your brain that makes decisions, that makes plans, that goes out and gets things done. That whole part of you, it's kind of cooked. So you have to let the grief just move through you. You have to let yourself surrender. You have to let yourself cry. You know, one of the things I like to tell people is that our tears are chemically different. You know, I met a woman who took photographs of tears with, you know, really tiny, tiny lens, you know, really got in there close and looked at the structure of the cells and the molecules in tears. And the tears for grief look different than the tears from frustration or the tears of laughter.
Really?
Yeah.
Do they look organized?
Well, they're all organized. They're always in a crystalline sort of structure, but they're organized differently. So what that tells me is the body knows what it's doing. The body's processes are designed to help you and heal you. So crying from grief is a good thing because those tears are the tears that will heal your body. And it's really hard to do that. I mean, losing a kid or somebody you really love, it just makes the whole bottom of everything you knew to be normal disappear. So, you know, it's an opportunity, actually, because it's a chance to go out to the edge of life and really sit with the bigger question of why am I here? What is my purpose? Why am I doing this life the way I'm doing it? Why are all these things that I thought I could count on, suddenly they seem strange? You know, one of the most profound things I experienced around Teal's death was spending time with people who did organ donation. And like I said, I've given some talks and such in that world and met the people who actually do this process of requesting the organs and arranging to find the recipients and all this. And that is an incredible group of people because every single day they're dealing with life and death. They're literally, if they make mistakes, somebody's life is not saved.
Yes.
And, you know,
and they need someone who died to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So they're super comfortable with death. And they're super comfortable being in this, you know, place most of us don't want to think about.
Comfortable or insensitive? What would you say?
Oh, I would say comfortable.
Comfortable.
These are not insensitive people. In fact, the woman who requested Teal's organs, they call them requesters, she works in several aspects around death, but she was one of the most sensitive, intuitive people I've ever met. And her whole thing is, you know, she feels her purpose is to help people find completion by being able to donate their loved one's organs, but also to you know, give that deceased person the opportunity to carry on. And, you know, those are big stakes. That's playing in life at a whole different level. That is not the same as, you know, our workaday world where we kind of go through our normal paces and we don't think much about anything and we kind of assume we'll live forever. And, you know, you kind of forget that you have a larger purpose. You forget that at any moment you could die. You forget, you know, to tell the people you love that you love them.
Well, they're lining up to talk to you, so let's go to the phones.
Wonderful.
Let's start with first-time caller Kathleen in St. Louis. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure thing.
My question is, I've been dating this a gentleman for about 6 months, and I'm a senior, and he's a senior. And he lost his son at around 29 years of age. A police officer here in St. Louis had killed him, shot him 7 times, and actually for no reason. There's a witness to this, and there's an attorney working on this case. But the witness saw the police officer plant drugs in his pocket, and he asked the officer not to kill him because he had a daughter. Well, his dad is helping taking care of his daughter, and he also lost his wife of 30 years a year ago. And he's just he I really try to help him. I'm a spiritual person, and I talk to him about our Heavenly Father and Jesus and Satan, and I've gone to support groups, and all the knowledge I have, I've been trying. I think I make a little bit of progress, but not enough. And he does cry. He does break down, and he doesn't understand why. He feels like he should have saved both of them. And I think, oh, my God, and he doesn't know what his purpose is here. And I really could use some advice.
Oh, I'm so sorry for all the suffering that's going on right now for you and him. And, my feeling about this is he is in a very, very profound process, and there's nothing that you can really do to change that. He has to go through his grief. He has to feel into the full emotional experience of this, because within that, my gut feeling is he will find a larger purpose. You have the chance when you lose a child. They always say you can become better or bitter. And the people who become bitter get attached to their grief. They feel there's a negative merge there that they need for some reason. But there's always the opportunity to create some sort of legacy, some sort of tribute. That helps with the process of acceptance, which is slow. It takes 3 years to recover from the death of a child.
At least.
At least is what I'd say. And, that's kind of a recover means become functional again. It took me 2 years. I didn't even work for 2 years.
I don't know how you did it, Suzanne.
Well, I lived in
I'm
a
not
friend's
sure
guest
I'd be
room.
able
It was
to.
really sweet, and she was very nurturing. And I don't really know how I did it either, except that I felt like, okay, I have a purpose here. I have this bigger thing I have to do, and that was to begin to receive this healing work. So, I understand how frustrating and hard it is to be the spouse or the partner of somebody who's grieving and feel like you can't help them. But actually, just being there is so helpful. Just allowing and being, and consider the possibility that this is actually unfolding as it's meant to, that there are lessons that have yet to be learned. There is some kind of healing work or tribute or memorial, like I said, that could be created that would help other people. This is the learning path to grief, and grief is a profound learning place, probably the most profound learning place in our lives, aside from raising children. It's just an extraordinary experience, and often seen for only its pain, yet it also has profound wisdom to share with us if we can just allow it in all of its messiness. Does that make sense for you, my dear?
Let me ask you this too, Suzanne. Does there come a time during the grief cycle that you snap out of it? You said it takes 3 years, but I mean, how does it end?
Well, I think what happens is you cry less and less over time. When you've had a shocking death like the one described here, or in my case with Teal, the whole first year you're in shock. You just can't even believe it happened, and especially with a violent death like this. And then you have to begin to do this healing process of crying and letting go. But I do feel over time my tears lifted. It's been different for Teal's dad and for me, and I've noticed how he's moved through it, and I think we all move through it differently. But I have to say that the willingness to really surrender to the grief is what helps it move along. If we try to avoid it, if we try to work through it, if we try to drink through it, whatever, it's just going to be there, and it's going to take longer. And, snap out of it is kind of interesting because that's what we all want to do. We just want to make it go away, right? Because usually we don't see it as this, what Suzanne talking about, this profound teaching, blah, 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 We just want it to kind of dry up and disappear. And it will. It does. But it isn't fast, and there is no snap out of it. It's gradual. And one day you cry. You know, I was crying every hour, and then I was crying several times a day, and then I was crying every other day, and then I was crying once a week, and then I was crying, you know, a couple times a month, and and I still cry sometimes.
It doesn't go away.
3 or 4 times a year now,
Exactly.
you know.
Let's go to Gary, Yuba City, California. Welcome to the show. Hi, Gary. Go ahead.
Thank you, George, for having me on, and
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. I had a question about my son. He's 11 years old right now. When he was 3 years old, I had never taught him anything about religion. I was, at that time, studying a lot of religions. I was trying to find my place and just going through Buddhism, Christianity, everything. And one night I asked him, instead of reading my bedtime story, I asked him, I said, I just want to talk to you. Who do you think created us? And he just looked at me, matter of fact, and said, well, Godmother created us. And then he proceeded to tell me this story about how Godmother, I said, how do you know this? Well, Godmother picked me up in my dream while I was sleeping, told me I'm Godmother. They took him to his Nana's and Papa's house, tried to preach to his Nana and Papa and tried to save them. And it was a really emotional thing that even till to this day, I still can't get over because, we're all kind of lost in our own way, I guess.
That's amazing that a little youngster like that would pick that up, Suzanne.
Oh, that is a beautiful story. I'm just sitting with it and sort of savoring it. Because I think, there's the story about the little boy who wanted to be left alone to hold his new infant brother. And the parents were kind of afraid because the kid was only 3, and what if he dropped him,
Right.
But he made them leave the room, and they did, and they hovered around the edge of the door, and they heard him say to the baby...
Kind of peeking in.
Yeah, he said to the baby, tell me about the God part. I've almost forgotten. And I think your child has wonderful sensitivity and a profound ability to understand the source of life. And that's just an incredible blessing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, Gary. Next up, we have Joe, Long Island, New York, east of the Rockies. Hey, Joseph.
Yeah, hi, Susan. I have 2 questions.
Sure.
Both a little longer that more relate to your podcast on self-care.
Mm-hmm.
First, on the topic of burnout, I can understand how a lot of people do get in overdrive, say if you're, like you were saying, about being a marketing executive. But how do you look for the signals on that where, things aren't resonating or vibrating and what can you do differently with that? For example, even if you're saying I need to exercise so much a month, you can't really stagger that at the very end of the month. You have to do it proximal to the need to exercise maybe. Or if you get into arguments, maybe do it proximal to the need to, kind of wrap up the argument. And then on perfectionism, which you mentioned, I like what you said about, being willing to make mistakes and as you experience things. But like, for example, when you move to San Francisco, if you're a perfectionist, you might, I would think, tend to sit on the sidelines because I think perfectionism ultimately involves tunnel vision, and it's hard to maybe go into new territory when you have a tendency to tunnel vision, I think. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, you brought up a lot of good stuff here, and let me just acknowledge you for calling in and reaching out and asking. These are kind of key questions to life. And the thing I would say about feeling like you're burning out, feeling like you're overwhelmed, like you've lost touch with yourself, is that your body is an incredible teaching tool. And one of the things Teal used to talk about in her lifetime is connecting with your body. she would say, if you lie down and put your hand on your gut and you just feel into your body, it will tell you what you need. Sounds strange, but this is actually true. We have, we read all this information about, you have to do this exercise, don't eat chocolate, high lead levels, blah, blah. It's like it's too much and it's too confusing sometimes. And we have lost touch with our basic warning system that tells us what we need and how to operate. So the fact that, you think you might have burnout says to me, burnout is probably cooking up or happening or certainly entirely possible. So the first thing to do is to just stop and sit with yourself and see what happens. And to put your hand on your gut and just, lie down in a relaxed position and ask yourself, what do I need right now? It's a simple question, but it's actually quite profound, because what it is telling us is to go within and listen, and just listen. And, perfectionism, it's ghosts in our heads from the past telling us who we are isn't enough right now. Who we are thinks, who we think we are is inadequate. But in fact, we are wise beyond our knowing. We are stronger than we think. We have the answers. We know where we need to go next. We're just not paying attention because we have gotten detached. And I would leave you with a little exercise, piece of homework, whatever you want to call it.
For everybody.
Yeah. Just take a piece of paper or a document on your laptop or your phone and write for 7 minutes uninterrupted and see what shows up. Just write and see what pours out, because what you may find is that you are harboring some resentments you didn't even realize you were angry about. You really don't like something like this or something like that. You really long for XYZ. These things come out as we unleash. I hope that helps.
Suzanne's website is her name. A couple of her books include The Extremely Busy Woman's Guide to Self-Care, The Joy of Letting Go, Free-Spirited, How My Daughter Healed Me from the Afterlife. We're going to come back in just a moment and take final calls. And when we come back, Suzanne, I want you to talk about a letter that you found after Teal died. That's a pretty good story, isn't it?
Oh, thanks, George. I will.
Okay, super. We'll be back in a moment, and I'll tell you also what you can expect on our next Coast to Coast program. And also don't forget to sign up for our free YouTube channel at coasttocoastam.com. Just go to the YouTube icon and fill out the free information. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie along with Suzanne Falter. Suzanne, before we go to final calls, tell us about this letter you found that Teal had written to you and apparently never handed to you.
Well, you know something, George, in the swirl of life, I was so busy, she did give me that letter, but I never paid any attention to it, and I can't even remember reading it.
Oh, no.
And what happened was I was sitting in my office trying to come up with some way to make a living 2.5 years after her death. I was still in this big holding pattern. I was so sick of it. I was just despairing. And I was praying, and I was saying, come on, somebody, Teal, whoever is listening, please, please show me how I'm supposed to move forward. I just don't have any idea. Maybe it's all for nothing, And I heard her whisper in my ear, clean out your inbox. Well, I had a wire basket in which I had dumped all of my papers. They were 5 inches high or more.
Jeez.
And they'd been, following me around from place to place as had gone through this big unsettled period of my life, and I'd never bothered to take any of them out or look at them. So I spent the afternoon cleaning it out. I put them all out on the floor, and I went through everything. And there was nothing that seemed significant. And the very last document in the very bottom of the basket, face down, was a letter from Teal.
There it was.
And she wrote to me in the letter that she had talked to a healer who had told her we were adversarial in many other lifetimes, but in this lifetime we were supposed to be deeply connected, and in fact we were supposed to be leaders in light together. And, I can't even tell you what the effect of reading that was like for me, because I felt her essence, I felt her energy, and I felt some hope. I felt some hope because I knew that there was a purpose to all this transition and transformation and pain and struggling and working on myself and trying to become a better person. I knew there was a reason for it. And, in the end of the letter she wrote, whatever comes, I just want you to know I'm here to be a leader in light with you. Let's go do it. Yeah. Love, Teal.
She took care of you, still does.
Yeah. I do feel that we are leading in light together.
Let's go take final calls here for you. Lisa in the Queens, New York, starting us off. Hey, Lisa, go ahead.
Hi, George. Hi, Suzanne.
Hi.
Hi. I'm going to try to do this without crying, but I don't know if that's possible. Well, I am grieving a man who I truly believe was my soulmate, is my soulmate, and it's only been about almost 8 months since he's gone, and we had a very short time together. The odd thing is that we actually never met in person. We both had health problems, and so that was going to make traveling difficult, and we just thought there was going to be more time. And, when both of us were better, that we would meet then. And but we wrote constantly to each other and talked on the phone every day. We only had about 3 months together. And I just am having a very hard time. Some days are much better than others. For me, I don't think that grieving is like a linear process. I seem to be better some days, and then, other days it's so much worse. Like today was very, very bad because it's the day before my birthday, and I thought that I would, possibly by now we would have met and I'd be, sharing my birthday with him, the last birthday in my 50s. But I have regret that I did not go to be with him. He had to have a surgery. And if he was going to be alone, I definitely was going to somehow make it there to be with him because I didn't want him to be alone. But it turned out that his brother was able to come to be with him. So, and we talked about it a little bit, and he said, I don't want to have to worry about you, when I'm in the hospital having a surgery and I'm going to be worried about you. Is something going to happen to you? Because I don't even leave home pretty much. So anyway, I just don't know, how can I deal with this regret I have?
Oh, but here's what I see, Lisa. Lisa, first of all, thank you for that vulnerable Sharon. I really understand your pain, and I am sorry for your loss. And here's what I see. I see that the whole purpose of this relationship was for you to build an energetic bridge with this man. That is an energetic bridge that carries on into the afterlife. And it is a bridge. It's like I really see this glowing bridge between you. And I'm not surprised you never actually met because it didn't matter if you were ever together in physical form. It was all about this energetic bridge. But that energetic bridge is here whether he is deceased or not. That energetic bridge, you can travel it just by holding your hand on your chest and closing your eyes and allowing the bridge to just be clear in your mind and letting it take form. It may be a while before you can really see it, but just see if you can't connect to him through this bridge. And I do feel that everybody who comes into our life who touches us deeply has a purpose. And there is a purpose for this. This regret or shame we feel in grief, everybody goes through it. It's just part of the deal. It's part of our brain actually being able to process the loss.
It's part of being human, isn't it?
It's part of being human. And you did everything perfectly, is what I see. You did nothing wrong, and he meant that when he said, please don't come because I'll worry. I could feel his sensitivity.
Let me ask Lisa this. Lisa, did you meet online? You never met in person, right?
Yes, we met online. Yeah. It's funny, through a game, a game we played, and he was on my team, and we just started writing to each other, and it was so unexpected. I wasn't looking for anything, but, it just was like we felt that this was like meant to be, and that, it was something neither of us was looking for, but it just happened, and I was so sure he was going to be okay, because I thought, why would we meet? Why would we meet and finally find each other and then have him taken away?
Yeah.
But I was wrong.
Yeah. And by the way, on behalf of all of us, happy birthday tomorrow.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you so much. Sometimes I do feel him around me. I have sensed him since he passed, but lately I haven't been feeling him as much, and that's been giving me a hard time too, because like you said, I feel like I want to continue this relationship. I want to, I want to do some spiritual work, and I'm interested in that anyway. I always have been, and I want to try to, be able to connect with him.
Do the souls eventually fade away, Suzanne?
I think that, everybody has different experiences with this. And a friend of mine meditated and got a message from Teal saying that Teal was going to be busy taking care of others and she wouldn't be around me as much. But I still felt her around me, so I didn't know about that message. I mean, I think it's individual. And my gut feeling, Lisa, is that you can ask him for signs. Send me a sign, dear. Let me know you're with me.
Something,
and then
favorite song you hear on the radio or something.
Yeah, anything.
Good luck to you, Lisa, and again, have a great birthday.
Yes.
Mike in St. Louis, take it away, Michael. Hi there.
George, thank you so much for taking my call.
Thank you.
Another wonderful guest. Susan, ironically, right when I believe a lot of intuitiveness and also a lot of about how the world handles or revolves around numbers. I started calling in on the line exactly at 2:10. My boy was born on 2:10 at 82. I lost him almost a year ago. Next month, exactly at 4:19. I'll be celebrating his 41st heavenly birthday, actually. So I wanted to see what, if anything, intuitive message that you have. I understand now you say it takes 3 years to go through the minimal of that grief. I still can't wrap my head around this. And the last few years have been really tough, but this one was a hard blow. So what do you have for me on this?
Mike, I'll tell you, I feel your pain, my friend, and I am sorry for your loss. And
I'm sorry for your daughter's loss.
Well, we're in the club together, right? And the thing that really helped me, one thing of many, was to create a special altar for Teal. And you know what it was? It was my car. I changed the license plate, and I called it the Tealster, and I put a photograph over on the dashboard.
I saw that on your website.
Yeah, it's actually I have the car on my website.
Tealster.
And I filled it with things that reminded me of her because I connected to her in the car. Now, you may find another, maybe, you and your son like to fish together, or, you pick a place that really honors who that person was and your connection to them. And you put on it things that would honor them. And, even things that make you feel good. And this little altar, it's actually been scientifically proven that creating a memorial altar helps you with your grief. It helps ground you in your grief. And it gives you a place where you might actually feel his presence, or you might just talk to him, even if you think, I must be crazy, he's not listening, there is no there, whatever you believe. Just do it because it'll make you feel better.
Suzanne, we've only got a minute left, and there were a lot of people still on hold wanting to talk to you. Could you give us an overview for them in a minute or less on just what they can do?
Everybody who is calling in, whoever you are, whatever your pain is, your body, your soul, and your spirit guides have the answer for you. And all you have to do is just feel into that truth. Do some journaling. Write for 7 minutes without stopping. Close your eyes. Ask your body, what do I need next? You've got the answer. You can do it.
And your website is?
SuzanneFalter.com, SUZANNE, F like Frank, ALTER.com.
Suzanne, thank you for having the strength and the fortitude to come forward to talk about your situation, and you do help a lot of people.
Oh, George, you're a love, and so do you. Thank you so much.
For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Boros, Tim Binal, George Knapp, and Ian Punnett, I'm George Norrie, somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.